But what I'm going to do, because I'm making a reversible hood, is I'm going to make another one of these exactly the same at this point out of the blue. There's no point in me showing you how to do that. I'll be back to the camera in a little while. I've now sewn two hoods exactly the same, one out of blue and one out of brown. The blue one is made using exactly the same steps I used to make the brown one, so you know how that was made. I've gone past the point of the steps for making a single layered hood, and I'm now making the reversible hood. But before I go any further, what I will mention is, it doesn't matter which different fabrics you use for the inside and the outside, and these steps are essentially the way to make a linen lined wool hood or something. You just use wool and linen. It doesn't have to be to achieve a reversible hood, it can be to achieve a lined hood. Before I can go any further to make my double layered hood, I have to cut off all of the enormous amounts of excess fabric and stringy thready bits. To be honest, if you're new to sewing, it might be a good idea to cut off all the stringy thready bits before you start. So just like that, all the way round, because they constantly get caught underneath the foot on the sewing machine, and because I've been sewing for so long, I just get used to flicking them out of the way as I go. But it might be a bit too much to remember, and you get stuff tangled up a lot. I should have told you that at the beginning as well. Never mind. So when I cut off the edges, it's only because once these are sewn together and turned inside out, I don't want a massive lump where there's loads of extra fabric, because there's literally about 1.25 inches there. And what I normally cut it down to is possibly 1/2 inch or a little tiny bit less. And the reason for that is because once it's turned inside out, these edges are still bare, and you don't want it to be able to fray on the inside all the way up to your sewing and then come undone, so you want to leave a decent amount. Just not so much you've got a lump on everywhere where you've got a seam. Now that's done, the next step is to figure out how to join these two together. Half this task I'll be able to do inside out, because I'll be able to turn it the right way round, but you can't sew both sides, because it's like tempting to sew round the bottom and then part of the way round the top and then flip it over. But you actually can't, because these are separated edges, so by sewing one and the other you've actually locked it the way round that it is. So you have to basically do the longest edge on the machine inside out so that it hides the stitches, and then turn it round and then sew the shortest edge by turning it in on itself. You'll see what I mean when I get to it. Now, because I'm doing it inside out, then the one that's the right way round will have to go inside the one that's the wrong way round, if that makes any sense. Now I hope you can sort of see what I'm doing. So that is the front of the brown one, that's inside out with the lines on the outside, and that is the front of the blue one, which is the right way round with the lines on the inside. So I'm just going to feed that inside. I'm going to poke the point together, and obviously it won't exactly line up, but I want the bottom of it to line up because that's the bit I'm going to sew. I mean, that will have to be done with pins. So now I've got a blue hood inside the brown hood. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the bottom edge together with those lines lining up. And then once I've done that, I'll just do a sewing machine run round that line all the way round the edge. So I have that pinned now. Essentially what I'm going to do is just do a stitch run straight around the edge, nothing complicated, and then I'll come back to the camera. So now that's sewn around the bottom edge, I'm going to cut the bottom edge to the same distance as I've done these, so that again there's no lumps inside it when I turn it round. So before I turn it round, I'll just show you this. You've got a point, and then outside the point you've got a border of about ½ inch. Now if you turn that the other way around, then all of the fabric from there to there will be screwed up into a ball inside that point, which means you won't actually be able to push that out from the inside and have it be a nice neat sharp point. So what I find works best is if you trim like insane close like that before you turn it round. So that will actually be, that's about 1/8 of an inch or 3mm from the point of the sewing to the inner edge of the actual fabric. Now I find that that is plenty to stop it from coming undone, and that's been tested on things that I've made years ago that are still fine. So I would do that on both of the points. It's not a very precise thing, but it works. And then on these edges, you haven't really got a point as such. It's like a very shallow angle. But what you have got is, because you've got this where this meets the edge, you've actually got 4 layers of fabric overlapping each other. Now this bit here isn't actually necessary, so you can trim that right back on both sides where that hem carries on, and it will still hold together, but you've got a lot less fabric then on the inside, so it won't give you a visible lump, if that makes sense. I'll go round and do the other ones, but I'll let you see that again. So that's done. It's now time to turn it the other way round, but first I'll give it a shake because I don't want any of these little bits ending up inside it forever. And some tidying up. Right, so because the bottom edge is now sealed, I'll have to turn it inside out through the hood hole, through the gap between the two hoods. Which is going to be a bit of a puzzle if I'm honest. Well, that now looks quite bizarre. I've got a hood attached to another hood. That's actually quite comic. But no, what I've got to do then is I've got to fold one of them inside out inside the other, because the inside one will always be inside out unless the hood's the other way round, if that makes sense. I mean, if you were doing it yourself you'd figure it out. So if I find the hood for the brown one. The brown one essentially should now become inside out, and the blue one should become the right way round, and then the seam should be in the right place. So then you have to poke out the corners. So like I said, this is where you see what happens if you have a lump in the corner, because you can press that right out. And it's definitely recommended to pull the edges all tight out so that they're all the right way round before you do any sewing, because once you've sewn up round the head hole you can't get your hand on the inside to do it. You can actually iron it so that it stays in exactly the right shape if you want, but I won't bother to do that because I'll be putting like a decorative border on it which will fix it in place anyway. But if you're just planning to leave it as it is now, then I would iron it so that it stays, otherwise it sort of gets muddled up which side is which. Yeah, so that one's being a bit stubborn, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a pointed thing, you can use like a pen or anything, inside it to just poke the corner out. There we go. That's nice and neat. And you can see what I mean now about not having to hem edges if you do a lining. And also about not being able to see the machine stitching if you do a lining. So there's a potential advantage to it from the historical reenactment point of view. So now that's the blue side of the hood. As I said, if you iron it so that those creases are like fixed in, then you won't get the brown showing on the front. But I'm going to put a border around it like I've done on the surcoat, so it's going to be grey round the bottom edge, so then that will be completely fixed and it won't be able to move. Next step is going to be the seam around the edge of the head. So what I'm going to end up doing with that is pinning it both sides inwards like that, and then doing a run of machine stitching around the edge. And that won't matter because the finished thing will have a border on it, so you won't be able to see. But what I will be doing is doing that last little bit at the bottom by hand so that there isn't any machine stitching on the outside. I didn't film all of that, but that was the most annoying pinning I think I've done for a while, because all my lines are on the inside now. I've turned it the right way round, and then you have to fold it back on itself on both sides before you pin it. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to whiz round the outside of that line on the sewing machine and then do the little bit by hand, and then the actual hood bit, minus the edging of course, will be done. So now I've sewn the seam on the top of the hood on the sewing machine. Again, that will be covered by a border. I've also pinned that ready to hand sew, that edge. And I've pinned around the bottom to make sure that it's completely flat. So what I'll do is I'll put a sewing machine stitch line around that and then I'll do the border. But essentially, there's no point in me showing you that stuff, because if I'd just done that last little bit on the machine and gone round the bottom on the machine, it would essentially be a finished reversible hood. So I've achieved the video goal, and I could wait about a week for doing loads of hand sewing before publishing the video just to show you that last little bit. Or I could start editing the video now, so I think I'll do that. If I've not finished editing the video by the time I've finished the hand sewing, then I'll put a picture in the video, and if not, well, I'll see you next time. So I hope this was helpful, especially to you guys who actually asked for this video. And if you make anything good, let me know about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.